Yep, 100%. I think it comes from that um, recognizing the way the process is broken, because I think a lot of these come from the fact that at the end of the day, these processes are built to kind of reduce risk as much as possible, right? So a client is going to triple bid out to agencies to reduce the risk. They can say, hey, we bid this out. We vetted 3 of the best vendors. They shared 3 of the best concepts. We went for the one that we felt was most secure to deliver us a return on investment, right? It's about reducing their risk. And so I'm coming at this from a perspective of, okay, how can I reduce that risk?
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Ponto. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm super excited to have Kevin Rapp on the show. Kevin is an award-winning, multidisciplinary creative director with vast experience ranging from startup disruptors to Fortune 500 companies. He executes high-quality, eye-catching work ahead of schedule and under budget, building brand integrity with custom multi-million-dollar campaigns. He's passionate about working with brands with a strong social mission and brings an authentically energetic presence to work. He also loves writing bios about himself in the third person. Congrats on writing a great bio about yourself, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thanks, buddy. I just have a particular set of skills, and one of those is being able to write my name in the third person.
Yeah, it's not awkward at all.
Not even a little bit.
So I'm really excited to have you on the show and to talk about something that I know you're really interested in, and I think a lot of the listeners could value, which is that relationship between two businesses, especially the agency to client relationship that a lot of marketing agencies are struggling with, because these days, especially with all like the AI tools and the changing in the market and disruption, how can, while your expertise is in like the creative agency to client, I'm sure for any sort of vendor relationship that companies have, navigating those relationships has to be more complicated than ever. So how do you see or recommend or work with these companies to help them manage those relationships better and explain the value they deliver in terms that their clients actually understand? Because it seems like a big challenge that so many companies struggle with, and it really can't afford to anymore.
Well, that is probably 18 questions that I could answer in that one question, Karl. So even before we got into the world of AI and things like that, the relationship between an agency and a client has always been really fraught and challenging, because I think a lot of the times it feels like there's friction between the objectives of the client and the agency, right? The client is trying to build their brand awareness by 15%, or they're trying to increase their conversions, or they have a very specific market objective that they're trying to achieve. And the agency is trying to do the best creative that they can. And so they are working in kind of objectives that are tracking towards the same overall goal, but are often measured very differently and are often treated very differently. And so they can kind of go off the rails when you're trying to make the best creative that you can, and you're measuring it based on craft when your client is measuring it based on performance. And so when you bridge those gaps, when you get alignment between the objectives and the way that those goals are measured, you have a much better chance of success. You have a much better opportunity to build stronger relationships when you're thinking about the work the same way the client is thinking about the work. So let me show you like the standard way an agency client relationship works, right? A client will come to agencies, usually multiple agencies. They'll triple bid something out and they'll say, hey, here is our creative brief. Here's our request for proposal. These are the things that we're looking for in an agency. This is the thing that we're trying to accomplish. And oftentimes the brief isn't always super clear on what the objective is. It'll be like, yeah, we want to lift brand awareness. Okay, but like, how are you measuring that? Right? Like what is actually going to be the thing that you want to report on to your chief executive officer to say that this marketing campaign was a success? That information is usually buried in the conversations before the brief rather than actually showcased on the brief itself. And so those initial conversations are held on kind of a false veneer of what the actual objective is. So the client is giving us as much information as they think is valuable for us to be a springboard, but isn't really getting to the meat and the heart of it. And then the agency typically takes that brief and goes, great, I have 3 concepts that are going to solve this business objective. And here are the 3 ideas that we have that are firm in stone that are absolutely going to work for you. And here's why they're so creative and they're so bold and they're so eye-catching and they're absolutely gonna get you that brand awareness that you're looking for. And it all becomes kind of this sales song and dance, right? Where the agency's just trying to show how creative they are rather than showing that they actually understand the problem that they're trying to solve and actually coming up with the tactics that are really going to push the actual problems the business is trying to solve. So the relationship and the way that the system is set up to build and maintain those relationships is kind of broken because they're all kind of under these false pretenses and they never actually get to having a real conversation of, okay, but what are you really trying to do? And how can we actually help you get there? And those are the tough conversations that need to happen. And it takes creatives being really business savvy and being able to understand what these businesses are actually trying to accomplish. And it takes them building enough trust and credibility with the clients to be able to pull the real information out of them so that they can have meaningful conversations about what they actually want to happen. And that is like what you talked about. It's a very core human thing. It's being able to have a meaningful relationship where you can have a true dialogue instead of a sales conversation. And so that was a long monologue, but that's kind of the way I think about it. It's about having a thoughtful and meaningful dialogue about what the real problem is so that we as a creative agency can actually solve the real problem rather than the things that gets put on the paper as a starting point for the dialogue and the conversation.
That makes so much sense, especially even in this context of creative agencies, but also for any sort of vendor, any client provider relationship, because it's so often people are aware of what the symptoms of the problem are, but not the actual underlying cause. And if you're not addressing that when it comes time to do the like quarterly follow-up or like do the debrief, like why didn't it work or why aren't we seeing the actual results we want? And it's because you asked to treat symptoms, not the problem, and the problem didn't go away, and it often just got worse. And so the treatment you prescribed didn't have the effect you wanted. And so I think it comes down to, like you said, the clear communication from the offset and really understanding what that problem is. And so when you're talking with your clients, what's kind of the steps you found that works helps to kind of get them to open up and go beyond the kind of surface level creative brief to, okay, what you really are trying to accomplish and what's the real problem? Because it's one thing to know that's what needs to happen, but another thing to actually get people to do it.
Yeah. Yep. 100%. I think it comes from that um, recognizing the way the process is broken, because I think a lot of these come from the fact that at the end of the day, these processes are built to kind of reduce risk as much as possible, right? So a client is going to triple bid out to agencies to reduce the risk. They can say, hey, we bid this out. We vetted 3 of the best vendors. They shared 3 of the best concepts. We went for the one that we felt was most secure to deliver us a return on investment, right? It's about reducing their risk. And so I'm coming at this from a perspective of, okay, how can I reduce that risk best for you? And a lot of the times it's challenging the prescription that they have developed. They said, yeah, this is what we think that we need to accomplish this. And I can say, okay, well, let me dive a little deeper. Why do you think that's the right solution? Why do you think that's the thing that you really want to do? And let me see if I have a recommendation based on my experience, based on the things that I've seen work, that I can provide a better recommendation to you. Like, for example, the thing that we get asked to do a lot is explainer videos, because for a long time, that was the king of the early stage to mid funnel marketing tactic, right? If you said, we need people to understand who we are and what differentiates us, it was an explainer video. Like, that was the dominant form of content in like the mid 2000s to 2010s. Everyone was asking for an explainer video if you were in a motion graphics field. Like, I bet anybody who has been in the motion graphics field has made dozens, hundreds of explainer videos. And so that's a tactic that comes out a lot when they say, okay, we need people to actually understand what differentiates us. And so then I dive in a little deeper and say, okay, what stage are you at? Are people truly aware of you yet? Do they know your name, know what industry you're in? How many things have you tested? How many messages have you tested? What messages seem to be performing well for you? And then based on the maturity of the marketing history of the company, I can then start to make some recommendations on whether they actually need an explainer video or whether they need something different. Maybe they need a campaign of assets because they haven't really put a lot of messaging out there before. This is maybe the first video that they've ever made. And why would you invest a lot of money into a video when you're only got one shot at it and you haven't tested anything else before? It's making a very big statement up front that you're investing a lot of money in that you don't really have any of that assurance that it's going to work. So for me, helping them reduce their risk is saying, actually, the thing that would benefit you the most is making a bunch of different videos that test different messages so that you can find out what's working. You can find out what's resonating in the marketplace, and then you can grow from there and you can iterate based on what you've tested in the market. That's the best way to reduce your risk. It's not to vet a bunch of different agencies. It's actually to put things out into the market at a lower cost overall that you can invest in finding out what works for you. So that's solving the business problem that they actually have, which is we have no idea what messages work for us, right? That's the real problem that they need to solve. And they're not going to tell you that in a brief. What they're going to tell you is, we'd like to raise our awareness. We'd like to ultimately create more conversions. We'd like to do these things. What they aren't telling you is, actually, the only real message testing we've done is headlines on a website. We found that this is working, but we'd actually like to see what our narrative is in video, and we'd like to explore that. That's a real business problem, and that's a real thing that we can help them solve by being nimble and being smart about what our deliverables are. So that's how we kind of break those silos down, is to keep asking questions to say, this is what you think you want. Why? And is there a better thing to get you the real business results that you're actually looking for?
Yeah, I love that approach, because oftentimes the people you're dealing with at these companies They know what they want, but they don't understand the process that a creative agency goes through to get those results. They don't understand. They try and shortcut that or skip that step, and then just assume they know how to do what they're paying you to do because they don't really know how to do it. So there's kind of this disconnect between their decision they made at the stage they think they're actually at versus, and then what they ask you to do versus what you just described, which is, let's go back and make sure we can actually validate that you are where you think you are in this process. Because if you don't have someone on your team that knows how to do this, you're probably not as far along as you think you are. And so that some of the real value of what you just described there is helping them better understand and be more aware of where they're at in this process and what their relationship is actually like with the market. Because like I said, with the de-risking thing, it's not asking a bunch of marketing agencies to do this thing at the stage you think you're at, that's a de-risk. It's understanding where you really are in your relationship with your audience, with your potential clients, with the buyers and the users, that de-risks it. Because if you know that, then you actually know what the next step is to take, and you're not trying to like take one step up, what actually is 10 tiny steps that you need to address in the relationship building process with their audience.
Yeah, I mean, traditional wisdom is that, the marketers are the people that understand the business, and they know exactly what we need to do. And then the creatives are the ones that make it pretty, right? Like that's the traditional process that people kind of tend to flock towards or tend to stereotype into, right? Marketers know what we need to make, creatives go make it. But I think the best creative work that I've seen happen is when those marketers and those creatives are having really strong conversations on both sides of the fence, where the marketers are chiming in on what they think works about the creative based on their understanding of the audience. When they're able to give strong creative feedback on why something is or would not resonate with an audience. And it's also when the creatives are having strong conversations about why the deliverable they're asking for might not actually help them achieve their objectives. When both of those two people are stepping into each other's lanes a little bit, those are the types of dynamics that I think make for really great creative and make for stronger business results. Because, I love having feedback come to me from project managers or marketers or the people they call non-creatives, because typically our audience are non-creatives, right? Like the people that we're talking to are not going to experience and digest the work the way that we digest and analyze it. The marketers are a lot closer to the audience, and so they have really valuable insights on what makes our creative great. And then we creatives are often seeing things about how we're making things and how it's going to be delivered and shipped into the marketplace in ways that are just like more common sense-ish, that I think are different than the analytical ways that marketers talk about it in the business sense. I think we both come at these things from a unique perspective, and when we each have a seat at the table strongly and communicate with transparency and autonomy, those are the best pieces of creative I've seen. Those are the best results I've seen, is when there is a really healthy dynamic between both of those teams.
Yeah, it's having that balance between the kind of data-driven analytics of the marketing side and understanding the emotionally driven human behavior side of things that creatives are often more in alignment with and understand. Because if you just have one or the other, you're missing a big part of that pie. And so like you said, having both people at the table discussing and giving their input to the campaign and like the content that's made and how it's used and what the audience is feeling and understanding, all of that is really needed. And so many companies either or go all in on, usually right now it's like the data side, and aren't thinking about the creative side or the emotional side enough to create something that's not just going to be like limp or kind of blasted when it comes to the impact it has on the business.
Totally. Like marketers need a creative that's going to say, no one wants to watch that. Right? Like, it's like you have made a brochure and you're trying to cram it into a 60-second video. And now that 60-second video is now 3 minutes because you just keep cramming message after message after message into it. And they need a creative that's going to stand up and say, it's now boring. We've made something boring and we need to rethink it. And the creatives need a marketer that says, you've made an art school project, right? You've made something that is very bold and you've made something that is very interesting, but I don't see how this is going to lead to us getting the conversions that we want, right? Like, I'm sorry, this is a Memorial Day sale, sir. We do not need your A24 film. Like, there has to be that like balance between both of those teams to have healthy dynamics, and that really comes from just building trust. And I can say on the creative side, it is a challenge to get marketers to have trust and buy-in in a creative, right? Like, we do have a reputation for having expertise on what makes things beautiful, and don't always have the reputation for having expertise on what's going to work for the client or work for the business, right? And so the advice that I always give to creatives is really spend as much time with your marketers as you possibly can. Deeply understand what objectives they're trying to achieve. Like, know how they're reporting success. Be able to cite results of previous campaigns. Like, hey, we worked on this thing, it did X and did Y. Mm-hmm. Be able to talk to the results. Like, the more that you understand your team, the more that you understand how they're incentivized, how they're measured, how they're reporting, the better trust you're going to build. And honestly, the better you're going to be at your job. Like, because when you understand these objectives, when you understand what you're trying to achieve, you are innately going to say, oh, this isn't going to work because we're trying to do X and they want Y. So like, you just become a better creative when you do work to understand what they need on not just a data and analytics level, but on a human level too. When you really understand what your marketer's trying to achieve, you're gonna be a better creative.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Kevin. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please leave a review and subscribe. If you want to check out more about Kevin or myself, there's links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.